from now. Yes, I need your help here in New Hampshire. Yes, I believe we can win here in New Hampshire. But here's the truth. I will need your support not only as we fight for the Democratic nomination nationally, not only as we fight to win the general election, but I will need your help the day after the election. Because here is the other reality. And that other reality is that the powerful people in this country, they have endless supplies of money. They own the media. They're enormously powerful. But when people stand together, when we do not allow our opponents to divide us up, when we stand together and fight for the working people of this country, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. So let me also do something that most candidates don't do, and that is talk about the real issues facing the people of our country. And let me just tick them off and begin by talking about an issue that to me deals with morality, it deals with politics, and it deals with economics. And that is understanding the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality that exists in this country today. And it's important that we put this stuff right on the table, and that is that today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than at any time since 1928. Today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than almost any other major country on earth. Today in America, hear this, the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Today in America, the wealthiest 20 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America. Today in America, one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. And here's this. It's not only the distribution of wealth which is grotesquely unequal, it is income as well. What's going on in your state? What's going on in my state? What's going on all over this country? And what's going on is that millions of people are working longer hours for lower wages. In Vermont, in New Hampshire, all across this country, we all know people who are not working one job, they're working two jobs, maybe they're working three jobs, trying to cobble together some income and some health care to take care of their families. Now, you're not the only one. It turns out that in America, our people today are working the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. And what does that mean? It means that families are suffering. It means that I talk to wives and I talk to husbands, their stress in their marriage because, the guy's working two jobs, she's working two jobs, they don't see each other. Kids are not getting the love and the care that they need. People are physically exhausted. So the question arises, how does it happen that when people are working longer hours for lower wages, when kids are working, mom's working, dad's working, 58% of all new income generated today, 58% is going to the top 1%. My friends, when you look at the grotesque level of wealth inequality, of income inequality, there is only one conclusion that we can reach, and that is we are living in a rigged economy. A rigged economy. The big money interests set the rules. Ordinary people get the shaft, and almost all new income goes to the people on top. So, are you ready for a radical concept? All right, here we go. What about creating an economy that works for working families and the middle class rather than a handful of billionaires? When we talk about the economy, it's important to talk about the pain of unemployment in this country. Now, every month the government comes out with an official statistic on unemployment. The last official statistic said that unemployment was 5%. Anybody here believe that unemployment in America is 5%? Okay. Because there's another statistic that doesn't get much attention. That's called real unemployment, which looks at people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. Millions of people are working part-time, working 29 hours a week, 20 hours a week, whatever. Add that together, real unemployment is close to 10%. And then let me tell you something that is even more upsetting, and that is youth unemployment in this country is off the charts. I asked some economists to study the issue for me. This is what they said. For kids 17 to 20 who graduated high school, didn't drop out, if they were whites, youth unemployment, 33%. Latino, 36%. African American, 51%. Now that is a tragedy for all of these young people who want to stand up on their own 2 feet, become independent, get out of the house, start life as an adult. But it relates to another tragedy that we're experiencing in this country today. And that is we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. We have more people in jail than China, 4 times our size, a communist authoritarian country. And if anybody thinks there is not a correlation between the fact that we have 5.5 million young people hanging out on street corners in Manchester and in Burlington and all over this country, and that many of these young people might get themselves into trouble, if you don't see the correlation, you are mistaken. So my view is that instead of investing in jails and incarceration, maybe we should invest in jobs and education. I want to see an America where our young people are at work or in school, not in jail. And when we talk about jails, it is important to talk about a broken criminal justice system. It is important to understand that we need real reform, that you and I are tired of seeing people shot and killed who are unarmed. That we need to create police departments that look like the communities they serve. That we need to demilitarize some of these police departments around the country. And that among many other things, we need to take a very hard look at the so-called war on drugs. It turns out that over the last 2 or 3 decades, millions of people in this country have received police records for marijuana possession. It also turns out that the federal government's Controlled Substance Act lists marijuana at the same schedule, the same level as heroin. All right, now all of you know, and I certainly do not have to discuss this at length with the people of New Hampshire or the people of Vermont, We all know what heroin and opiates have done to the people of our state. We know that in your state it appears that one person a day is dying from overdosing, either legal or illegal drugs, that everybody in this room knows or should know that heroin is a killer, and we've got to do everything in our power to make sure that our kids do not get hooked on heroin and other opiates. But we have also got to understand that a lot of lives have been destroyed because of these police records for marijuana. And that is why I have introduced legislation that would take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. And when we ask why it is that our people are working such long hours, the answer is not complicated. And the answer is that wages in our country are much too low. The answer is that a federal minimum wage of $7.25 is a starvation wage. You can do the arithmetic as well as I can. Multiply $7.25, $8 an hour by 40 hours a week by 52 weeks a year, and you end up with a number that nobody can live on, let alone raise a family. In my view, we have got to raise the minimum wage in this country to a living wage, $15 an hour over the next few years. And I hope when we talk about equitable wages that every man in this room will stand with the women and fight for pay equity for women workers. You know, one of the things that our campaign is trying to do is to bring forth discussions of reality in America. It's something that you don't often see on TV or read in. No, it's unfortunate, but it's true. And here's a reality. I was in Nevada last week, and I talked to a young woman, early 30s. She has a kid who's 5 years of age. She's making $10.45 an hour, and she owes student debt. And with tears coming down her cheeks, she told me how frightened she is about the future for herself and her child. And when we talk about heroes in this country or heroines, I cannot think of people I respect more than the millions of women in this country who are desperately trying, single moms, who are desperately trying to raise their kids with dignity. My God, that is hard. So when we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, when we have pay equity for women workers, we will go a very long way to providing dignity and security for those women and for their children, and that is exactly what we have got to do. Now, in this country, there is, in our political world, an enormous amount of hypocrisy, to say the least. So we have Republican candidates for president running around the state of New Hampshire talking about family values. They just love families, just love families. But you all know what they mean by family values. What they mean is that no woman in this room, no woman in this state, no woman in this country should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. What they mean by family values is that Planned Parenthood, which provides excellent quality health care to millions of low-income women, the Republicans want to defund Planned Parenthood. I want to increase funding for Planned Parenthood. And when Republicans talk about family values, they also mean that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to marry. I disagree. You really want to hear me sing, huh? No, you don't. But let me talk about family values. I've been married 27 years, and my wife and I, thank you. Didn't know we'd make it, but we did. All right. I've been married 27 years. We have 4 kids and 7 beautiful grandchildren, and I believe, my wife believes very strongly in family values. But when we talk about family values, our values are just a little bit different than my Republican colleagues. Just a little bit. And that is that I believe that we have got to end the international embarrassment of the United States being the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee paid family and medical leave. And here is the hypocrisy of my Republican colleagues. Every day, they go around the country telling us how much they hate the government. They want to cut Social Security. They want to cut Medicare. They want to cut Medicaid. They want to do away with the EPA. Hate the government. But when it comes to a woman having to make a very difficult and personal decision, they love the government. They want the government to make that decision for every woman in America. That's called hypocrisy. But when I think, and many of you believe, that we should join the rest of the industrialized world and have our government pass legislation which guarantees 3 months of paid family and medical leave, oh, then they hate the government. So government can get into your bedrooms, government to dictate the most intimate and personal decisions. But when it comes to the government standing for millions of working families, allowing a mom to stay home with a newborn baby, that's not what our Republican friends want to see. So I believe, and I am on supporting legislation which will provide 3 months of paid family and medical leave to every family in America. Now, if real unemployment is 10%, if youth unemployment is 30 or 40 or 50%, it seems pretty clear to me that we need a massive federal jobs program to put our people back to work. In my view, we should be hiring teachers, not firing teachers. In my view, when millions of working families cannot find high-quality, affordable child care, now is the time to hire hundreds of thousands of well-trained, well-paid child care pre-K teachers so that we can have the best child care system in the world. And when we have an infrastructure, our roads, bridges, water systems, rail, airports, levees and dams, which are crumbling, now is the time to create up to 13 million decent paying jobs, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. And by the way, when we talk about jobs, it is important to talk about our disastrous trade policies. Not a sexy issue, something media doesn't follow very closely, but here's the fact. Since 2001 in this country, we have lost 60,000 factories and millions of decent paying jobs. Not all of that is attributable to trade, but a lot of it is. And as many of you know, our trade policies have historically, under Democratic and Republican administrations, been written by corporate America. What do they want? What they want is a policy which enables them to shut down plants in New Hampshire and Vermont and America. What they want is not to have to pay workers here $20, $25 an hour, provide benefits, protect the environment. They want to be able to shut down, leave this country, go to China, go to Vietnam, go to Mexico, hire low-wage labor, and bring their products back into this country. That's about it. That's what the trade policy is. That's what they wanted. That's what they got. Well, let me tell them that if elected president, those days are over. Every night, leave here, turn on the TV, watch the commercials, buy this, buy that, buy this. They want you to buy their products. Well, if they want us to buy their products, how about manufacturing those products here in the United States? Tomorrow in New York, I'll be talking about one of the important economic issues facing our country. And it deals with the greed and recklessness and illegal behavior on Wall Street. Now, all of you are aware that Wall Street is the most powerful economic and political force in this country. That's just a fact. When they wanted to deregulate, they spent billions of dollars on campaign contributions and lobbying. And they said, we want to be deregulated, get the government off of our backs, let us go out and show the American people all of the things that we can do without government regulation. Well, they did show us. And it turns out that the business model of Wall Street was and is fraud. That is a result of their reckless, illegal, and fraudulent ways. They drove our economy into the worst recession since the Great Depression. Millions of people lost their jobs, and many of those people still have not recovered. They may have jobs today, but they're at wages a lot lower than they had before the recession. Millions of elderly people lost their life savings. Millions of people lost their homes. And then Wall Street, after crashing the economy, had the chutzpah to come to the United States Congress and to you, and they said, okay, hey, yeah, we're greedy, yeah, we operate illegally, yeah, we destroyed the economy, but how about bailing us out? And Congress, against my vote, did bail out Wall Street. And here's the irony. After bailing out the major banks because they were too big to fail, turns out that 3 out of the 4 largest banks in this country are much, much bigger today than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. You got it. Who's this guy who's writing my speech behind me? And it turns out, not only are we still in a position where we may have to bail them out again, but we are in a position where a handful of banks have enormous control over the economy. 6 largest banks in America, it's not a whole lot, issue 2/3 of the credit cards. Credit cards that you got in your pocket probably come from one of the 6 largest banks in America. They write about 35% of the mortgages in this country. Now, it seems to me, when you have 6 financial institutions that have assets equivalent to almost 60% of the GDP of this country, when they're growing bigger and bigger, when they have enormous economic and political power, if Teddy Roosevelt were alive today, what he would say, it's time to break them up. I agree. And here's another point. When I talked a moment ago about people's despair and people giving up on the political process, it has a lot to do with Wall Street, and I'll tell you why. You got kids who get arrested for possessing marijuana. They have a criminal record. Occasionally, not often, they may even go to jail. And yet you have the CEOs of the largest banks in America who commit crimes which impact the lives of millions of people. And not one CEO of a major financial institution has gone to jail. And what that does to the country, it's not something I think that people even necessarily think about, but they feel it. They understand that not only is the economic system rigged, but they understand that we have an unfair system of criminal justice. Kid smokes marijuana, hey, you got a police record. You're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar bank that destroys the economy, no problem. No problem. So what I think is we are going to create a criminal justice system which treats all people equally, including the wealthy and the powerful. Today, we got a system where the largest banks are too big to fail, and apparently the big bankers are too big to jail. I think it's time to change that. Now, we live in an economy where a handful of people own much of our nation's wealth and income, much of the economy. And we live with a campaign finance system which is corrupt and which is undermining American democracy. What do I mean by that? Here in New England, New Hampshire and Vermont, we have had for hundreds of years town meetings. People come out and they argue about the size of the school budget or the municipal budget. They yell and they scream at each other, and then they all get one vote. One person, one vote. That's old-fashioned democracy. That is what I believe in. But as a result, I know that's a radical idea, but that is what I do believe in. But as a result of this disastrous Supreme Court decision, which will go down in history in terms of Citizens United as one of the worst decisions in the history of our country, well, what the Supreme Court said is that, okay, you guys already own the economy, you own much of the economy, we're going to give you the opportunity to buy the United States government. That's what they said. You can spend, a billionaire, you can spend as much money as you want in buying elections and buying candidates. And the result of that is that you have seen a huge growth in super PACs. You have seen relatively few families, a few hundred families, contributing almost half of the money being raised by candidates. Huge super PACs, money coming from millionaires and billionaires. You are seeing the Koch brothers and a few of their friends. Koch brothers, second wealthiest family in America, worth about $80 billion. The Koch brothers, by the way, so just that you know it, they don't want to cut Social Security. They want to eliminate Social Security. They don't want to cut Medicare and Medicaid, not them. They want to eliminate Medicare and Medicaid. They don't believe the federal government should be involved in health care. It's not that they don't want to raise the minimum wage. They want to eliminate the concept of the minimum wage. So in a high unemployment area, you can work for $4 an hour because there is no floor. That is their view of freedom, getting the government out of all aspects of our economic and healthcare life, going back to the 1920s and eliminating virtually every piece of legislation designed to protect workers, the elderly, the children, the sick, and the poor. They want to take us back to the time when if you are elderly and you are sick and you have no health insurance, your option is to beg somebody to give you a few bucks. That's their idea of freedom. This group of people is spending in this campaign alone at least $900 million to elect similarly minded candidates. Now, when you have a family, one family, spending more money than the Democratic or Republican parties, that's not a democracy, that is an oligarchy, and we are not going to allow that to continue. So here's a promise. No nominee of mine to the United States Supreme Court will get that position unless he or she makes it abundantly clear that one of their first orders of business will be to overturn Citizens United. What this campaign is about is not only winning the White House, but more importantly and simultaneously, because it's really the same thing, it is revitalizing American democracy. I do not want this country to continue having one of the lowest voter turnouts in the world. I want us to have one of the highest voter turnouts in the world. I do not want and will fight tooth and nail these Republican governors all across this country who are working night and day to suppress the vote. You would think that when voter turnout in this country is abysmally low, when in the last election a year ago, 63% of the American people didn't vote, 80% of young people didn't vote, you would think that any decent-minded person, regardless of his or her political views, would say, wow, how do we increase voter turnout? How do we create more participation in the political process? People fought and died to preserve American democracy. We got to get more people involved. That's what you would think that a decent-minded person would say. And yet what these guys are saying is, how do I create a situation where I make it difficult for poor people or people of color or old people to vote because they might vote against me? So I say to those people, you are political cowards. If you don't have the guts to participate in a free and fair election, get another job. Get out of politics. When we talk about where we are as a country, All of us understand that we live in a highly competitive global economy and that we need the best educated workforce in the world. The truth is, there was once a time 30, 40 years ago where that was the case. We had the best educated workforce in the world. Sadly, that is no longer the case. The reality is that today, hundreds of thousands of bright, young, qualified people who want a college education are unable to get that education for one reason, and that reason is their families lack the funds. Now, that is not only terribly unfair to those young people, but it is unfair to America's future, because we need to tap the best intellectual capabilities that we have. We need to take advantage of everybody's brain power. I want us, once again, to have the best educated workforce in the world, and that is why I will fight to make sure that every public college and university in America is tuition free. And that is important not only for the obvious reasons that students can go to school without incurring huge debt, but there's an even more important reason. I grew up in a family where my mom and dad never went to college. And when you grow up in a family where your parents never went to college, you associate with other families and kids who never went to college. So there are millions of kids in this country who really don't know people who have a college degree. And they believe instinctually in their guts that there's no way that they're ever going to make it to college. It's as likely as they'll get to college as they will to the moon. Ain't going to happen. What our goal has got to be is to tell every parent in America, every teacher in America, every kid in America, that if you study hard, if you do well in school, yes, regardless of the income of your family, you will get a college education. But it's not just college. Not just college. I was here in New Hampshire not so long ago, and I was at an IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. There they are. At a great union. And what they were doing is training young people to be electricians and to install solar panels. So not everybody wants to go to college. There's an enormous amount of important work to be done as electricians, as plumbers, as carpenters, sheet metal workers, and we have to make sure that our young men and women get the training to do those jobs as well. And then there's another issue tied into higher ed. There are millions of people in this country, some young and some not so young, who are getting destroyed financially because of high student debt and high interest rates on that debt. All right, anybody in this room dealing with student debt? Oh, no. Okay. All right, question. What kind of interest rates are some of you paying? What? All right, how much? 5.7, 7.8, 9%. 12%, 9.4, what? 13. I think you win. Not a great prize. All right, so we have, now here's the question. All over this country, people are struggling with student debt. Talked to a guy in Nevada a week ago. This is the guy. Guy's about 55 years of age. Not funny. 55 years old, and he says, you know, Bernie, I have been paying off my student debt for 25 years. And he said, it is higher today because of interest rates than when I initially got it. Okay? I talked to a woman here in New Hampshire last year, and she said, it's a mom, and she says, hey, I'm not only paying off my daughter's student debt, I'm paying off my own, paying off interest rates for mom and her daughter. All right. We got people paying 20, You doing that? There you go. All right. We have people paying 20, 25% of their limited incomes on student debt. That means they can't buy a car, can't get a home, sometimes you can't get married, can't have kids, all that stuff. That's pretty crazy. So what are we going to do? Tell you what we're going to do, young lady. What we are going to do is give you the opportunity to get rid of your 13% interest rate, and we're going to let you go out and get the lowest possible interest rates you can. Now, here in New Hampshire and in Vermont, I think my wife and I refinanced the house a couple of years ago. It was 3%, 4%, I don't know what it is. What is refinancing a house today? What is it, 4? 4? All right. You should be able to get the same interest rates on your student loan as people get in refinancing their home. She is smiling. That's making her very happy, right? Okay. You should not have to be stuck with a 13% interest rate. If he is, that's right, exactly. That's highway robbery. I mean, especially as a teacher, my God. All right. Now, if we, as I want to do, if we make public colleges and universities tuition free, and if we substantially lower interest rates on student debt, I have been criticized by the Wall Street Journal and others for saying this is a lot of money you're spending, Bernie. You know, and they're right. It's about $70 billion a year. So how are we going to come up with the $70 billion to pay for free tuition at public colleges and universities and lowered interest rates on student debt? Well, as a matter of fact, what we are proposing is a tax on Wall Street speculation. Thank you. Now, the Wall Street Journal doesn't think it's a good idea. What can you do? They say, I know. Secretary Clinton, in a recent debate we had, when asked about, does she want corporate America to like her, and she said, yes, she does. Well, I myself can live without the love of Wall Street. In fact, if I do my job right, they will dislike me very, very much. But that is what this campaign is basically about. You can't be liked by everybody. Rich get richer. We have 47 million people living in poverty. We have a middle class which is disappearing. We need leadership in this country today that has the guts to stand up to Wall Street and corporate America and fight for an economy that represents all of us. And if they hate my guts, that's okay with me. Now, there is another issue that is out there that is of not only great consequence for our country, but for the entire world. And that is that when we speak about our responsibilities as human beings, as adults, as parents, there is nothing more important than leaving this planet, our only planet, to our kids and our grandchildren in a way that is healthy and habitable. The debate is over. Climate change is real. It is caused by human activity, and it is already causing devastating problems. That's right. I came back. I've been traveling all over the country. I came back to Burlington for Christmas Eve. Temperature, and I guess it was the same here. It was 65 degrees in Burlington. No one had ever seen anything like that. But what we're seeing all over this world is more drought, more flooding, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, which is a huge deal, more rising sea levels. What we are seeing is growth in international conflict because people are going to be fighting over limited natural resources. Now, what I want to do is connect some dots here. I mentioned before how we have a corrupt campaign finance system, and I'm mentioning now how we need to have the guts to stand up to the fossil fuel industry and tell them they cannot continue to destroy our planet, that we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And yet, we have a Republican Party that refuses, by and large, with few exceptions, to even acknowledge the reality of climate change, let alone do something about it. Why is that? Thank you. I got some smart people over here. That's right. The answer is, not that they don't read the literature, they don't talk to scientists, they do. The answer is that any presidential candidate running around, Republican presidential candidate running around your state, who stood up tomorrow and said, you know, I've talked to the scientists, I've read the literature, we got a scary problem, we got to do something about it. On that day, that candidate would lose his or her support, campaign contributions from the Koch brothers, the fossil fuel industry. That's the simple truth. And that is what a corrupt campaign finance system is doing. That is the power of the fossil fuel industry to get their way. And that is how things go. That's how Wall Street got deregulated. That is why we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Which takes me to another issue. How many major countries are there in the world that do not guarantee health care to all people as a right? Anyone know? There's a very smart section over here. I don't know what it is. That's right. So I want you to think about it. Because what this campaign is about is thinking big, not small. So I want you all to think about it. We are the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We have seen a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires in recent years, and yet we are the only major country that does not guarantee health care to all people. And it's not just, my friends, that 29 million people have zero health insurance. It's that millions more are underinsured with large deductibles and co-payments. Anybody in this room have a large deductible? What is it? You got to pay out of your own pocket. And you have to go every week. Okay? So he's paying $50 out of his own pocket that the insurance company does not pay. What else do I hear? How much? $1,600 a year. Okay. 5,000? 6,600. Half your pension. Okay. What else? Who said that? All right, $10,000 a year deductible. All right, so that means that virtually every time you go to the doctor, it's coming out of your own pocket. Is that correct? Okay. Okay. There are millions of people in exactly that same situation. Now, I want you to think about, not only is it unfair, it is stupid. And I'll tell you why it is stupid. I talk to doctors all over this country. And what every doctor I talk to tells me, that patients often walk into their offices who are much sicker than they should be. And then the doctor says, why didn't you come in here 6 months ago? You're really sick. And what does the patient say? Patient says, well, I got a high deductible, couldn't afford it, or I have no health insurance. And then what happens? Person is so sick, sometimes doctors lose those patients. People die because they don't go into the doctor when they should. Thousands of people die every year for that reason. Others end up in the emergency room. Others end up in the hospital at huge costs to the system. So it makes eminent sense that when you are sick, go to the doctor. Don't get sicker. But we are the only major country that doesn't guarantee health care to all people. And yet, 29 million uninsured, more who are underinsured, and yet we end up paying by far, ain't even close. You don't see this on TV too much, but we should talk about it. We end up paying far, far more per capita than do the people of any other major country. In the UK, which covers all of their people, we spend almost 3 times per person on healthcare as they do in the United Kingdom. We spend 50% more than the French. We spend a hell of a lot more than our neighbors up in Canada who guarantee healthcare to all people. So you add all of that up, millions uninsured, millions more underinsured. People can't afford prescription drugs because we pay the highest prices in the world. What's the conclusion? The conclusion is we've got to join the rest of the industrialized world, guarantee health care to all people as a right through a Medicare for all single-day program. We are living in a very difficult time in this country. And in my view, and what this campaign is trying to do, I think with some success, is to bring people together to stand up and to fight to create a government and an economy that works for us all. Our job is to bring people together, not to divide us. Unfortunately, and we're seeing this every day, we have Republican candidates like Donald Trump. And what he is trying to do is to win votes through demagogic means. What he is trying to do is to turn one group of people against another group of people. And that's the oldest trick in the book. He didn't invent it. It's gone on for hundreds of years in every country in the world. When people are hurting, when people are fearful, the easiest thing in the world is to say, hey, you know what the cause of your problem is? The cause of your problem is some Latino tomato picker who's earning $8 an hour. That's the cause of your problem, and we got to throw all of the undocumented people out of this country. Or you know what the real cause of your problem is? It's the Muslims, and we got to build a wall and prevent Muslims from coming into this country. Or you know what the cause of your problem is? Is that President Obama was not born in America. President Obama was not, and maybe he's not even a Christian, and we have to dislike President Obama and cause a rift with the African American community. So let's divide this nation up. Whites against blacks. People born in this country against people who came into this country. People against Muslims. Let's divide everybody else up, and let's create a nation of hatred. So I say to Donald Trump, that ain't what this country is about, and you're not going to get away with it. We know. We have seen this movie for decades in this country. It used to be whites against blacks. It used to be straight against gays. It used to be men against women. We have seen how they have tried to divide us up, having people fighting with each other for the crumbs, and the rich get richer and everybody else gets poorer. We're not going to fall for that anymore. And I find it interesting that the same guy who wants us to fight with each other is a guy who does not believe we should raise the minimum wage above $7.25 an hour. Quite a thing, a multi-billionaire saying we should not raise the minimum wage. And this is a guy who says in a Republican debate that wages in America are too high. And this guy, who's clearly also a brilliant scientist, has concluded that climate change is a hoax and the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive. What an insight. How brilliant can you be? The entire scientific community has concluded that climate change is real, causing major problems, and Trump believes that it's a hoax created by the Chinese. Surprised it wasn't the Mexicans, it's usually the... But what can we do? So what we have got to do, my friends, is to make sure that we do not succumb to those kinds of divisions which end up having people fighting for crumbs, people fighting against each other, while the people on top laugh all the way to the bank. What we have got to do is to think big, not small. What we have got to do is to understand that in the last 30 years, there has been a massive transfer of wealth in this country from working families to the top 0.1% who now own twice as much wealth as they did 30 years ago, while the middle class continues to disappear. So what our job when we think big is to understand that there is no reason on earth why every man, woman, and child in this country cannot have health care as a right. There is no reason on earth why all of our people cannot get a higher education regardless of the income of their families. There is no reason on earth why we cannot have a high-quality, affordable child care system. There is no reason on earth why we should continue to have a higher rate of childhood poverty and why we should continue to have more income and wealth inequality than virtually any major country on earth. So the point of this campaign, and what I mean by a political revolution, is for us to have the courage to stand up, to fight back, not just for ourselves, but for our parents and for our kids. The truth is, we can create an economy that works well for all of us. We can expand Social Security, not cut Social Security. We can make sure that all of our veterans get the health care and other benefits that which they are entitled. There is nothing that I have discussed tonight that is pie in the sky, that is utopian, that is unachievable. We can do it. But the only way we do it is when millions of people stand up, get involved in the political process, and are prepared to fight for an America whose potential, whose extraordinary potential, we have yet to achieve. Thank you all very much.